Thank you, Ruan. Thank you for keeping this Zoom series going during the pandemic. And thank you also to Dr. Mahendra Gonsal Korala, who has been doing all the advertising and the web work for this series. So today's speaker, Professor Madduma Bandara, perhaps needs no introduction to some of you, but for those of you who don't know him, he began his academic career at the University of Colombo and transferred to the University of Peradeniya for his undergraduate studies. He then moved to the UK, to the University of Cambridge for his doctoral research in land-water interactions. And in fact, last month, I saw the room that he sat in St. John's College when I was a visiting fellow at Cambridge, because Professor Madduma Bandara's colleague, Professor Tim Bailey-Smith, showed me around the college. So Professor Madduma Bandara was supervised by Professor Bertram Farmer and Professor Richard Chorley, a world-renowned geographer. Professor Madduma Bandara served his home university, that is Peradeniya, for over 40 years, becoming the head of the Department of Geography, and he rose to the rank of Professor on Merit. He also served as Vice-Chancellor of the University of Peradeniya for 3 years. He has been a guest professor in several universities overseas, in Nigeria, in Ilorin, in Cambridge, in the UK, and in 3 Japanese universities in Tokyo, Kyoto, and Tsukuba, and the UN University. He has also worked for several international organizations in the World Bank, USAID, NORAD, GTZ, and the International Union for Conservation of Nature. He played a vital policy advisory role to the Sri Lankan government as chairman for several commissions, the Presidential Land Commission, National Water Resources Authority, and on the academic board of the National Institute of Education and the National Environmental Council. So Professor Madduma Bandara's research covers several disciplines, but mostly issues on environment, land policy, and water resources. His key contributions were in watershed management, coastal zone planning, agro-well development, ancient irrigation, and in the culture-environment interface, embracing traditional knowledge systems. He was responsible for the introduction of the concept of tank cascade systems, promotion of agro-wells in the 1970s, the first National Environmental Action Plan. He's also well known for his proposal for redefining the colonial provinces of Sri Lanka along river basin boundaries. And I heard his lecture a few years ago in Colombo on this topic. He has published widely over 100 research papers in journals, both overseas and in Sri Lanka. And he has won awards. He won the award of Merit from Lanka Jalani Global Water Partnership for his contributions to the water sector. So not surprisingly, the Sabaragama University conferred an honorary DSc on him for his contributions to research. He's a fellow of the National Academy of Sciences in Sri Lanka and also a fellow of the Royal Geographical Society of the UK. Professor Madduma Bandara, we are looking forward to hearing your lecture today on ancient hydraulic civilization of Sri Lanka, some new lines of inquiry. Thank you for accepting the invitation of the Sri Lanka Literary Society. So it's now over to you.
Thank you, Shihan, for that very generous introduction. And I think it is after some time that I'm speaking to an audience in the UK. Thank you all for joining this. Maybe some others will join later, but let us proceed from there. First of all, I must thank Shihan and Ruan for bringing me into contact with you all. So this evening I thought we can speak on a subject which is closer to our hearts as Sri Lankans, that is ancient irrigation. So let me begin from there and put it on. Yeah, I hope you can see my first slide.
We can.
Hello.
We can see.
Okay, so from there onwards, I will start off. I hope you recognize who is on the stone there. Shihan would have gone through this. I think that these technical things are, it will take little time to explain, but this is the old cistern sluice used in the old villages, right? It is still being used, but modern systems have replaced this. But in some of our papers, we indicate that the old sluice is more efficient than the new one. Well, this is again a picture of the tank country, or what you call the Bandara. Then the cascaded village tanks. This is what I could contribute in my little way.
Shihan, next one.
Pardon?
Next one, I think. I don't think you're seeing. You seen this, Professor?
Yeah, I can see that, but can you all see?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can see.
So this is, I'm quoting from Ratnatunga, who was one of the pioneers in this field, to show you what the tank is and the paddy fields are. And then these clusters of tanks, which I call the cascades for want of a proper word. These are, you can see in the map, these tank systems are there. And this is near Nachadu major tank. You can see the major tank on the upper side of the picture. And this cascading means clustering together, joining together like chains or in other forms, right? Here you get a satellite view of the thing, the same thing. Cascades are named here, at least two of them. You can see one tank below the other. And this is the concept, and this is the definition used at that time. A cascade is a connected series of village tanks organized within a micro or meso catchment of the dry zone landscape, storing, conveying, and utilizing water from an ephemeral rivulet. This is the definition I presented in 1985, and it is still holding with slight change here and there. You can see what happens here. This is a tank, and this is a rice field below it. And the drainage water goes to the next tank, and to the next tank, and so on. So this has to be maintained by people very carefully. Otherwise, in a time of very heavy rainfall, if this tank collapses, if the bund collapses, the water piles up in the next tank and it can't bear up so much water, it collapses. And then the next one, and so on. So this is what I call the domino effect. The management is a critical issue here. Okay, then this is another cascade. And the landscape shows you, it's a photograph I have taken of the Mahalia tank in the northwestern province. Other one is in the northern province, Madavachia, that area. You see all the blue ones are the tanks, and forests are in green, dark green. A lot of studies have been done on this. And we found that, in the modern context, the agrochemicals used in the upper areas here can gradually pass from one tank to another. And they can be very high downstream. So these are the villages in the system here. You can see, I think Shihan has gone through this. The caste system still prevails, but not so strongly as in India, where it is a more kind of humane type. Then in a more scientific way, I thought we have to go into systems analysis if we are to understand the working of a cascade system. And here more pictures. One thing important in this picture is that Mr. Ratnatunga again, he uses this term. If you can look at the blurred this thing here, he says artist's impression of a balanced ecological village. Now, this ecological village concept is very worldwide now. I think in the West, Western Europe particularly, this ecological village thing is resorted to now. In Japan, things like Satoyama is there. So the whole argument is that, I mean, we do almost everything in our life to increase happiness. So what kind of human settlement would give the people the highest level of happiness, sustainable happiness, of course. So village with about 40 families, 40 or 50 families, they know each other, unlike in a town where become a number. So here the ecological village idea is to argue towards happier human settlements. Okay, then this is the, in essence, the whole concept of cascade systems, or watch or something. So there are 5 subsystems one can identify. The first one is the ecological system with catchment forest, etc. Then second is the water management system with technology like weirs. In local language, we call it the Karahankota. Then third, the agricultural systems, chenas, paddy fields, gardens, and so on. Then the social systems. Sometimes for each village, there is a separate group who will intermarry and so on. Then leadership structures. This is very important in management. Then 5, the cultural and spiritual norms. Okay. Then next, 29.
29. Yes. Paddy lands.
Yeah, management of village tank systems. That is the slide. Slide number 29.
We on it? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Let me very briefly say that, these are village settlements where there had been a traditional leadership. And of course, there had been private tank systems like Vapi Hamika in our old literature. Vapi means Vavar. Hamika is the owner. So he was governing, but in a community system, there had been natural leaders like the Gamarala or Velvidani. Velvidani system was there in the past, but the British reintroduced it later after abolishing the traditional system. They had to bring a new act to, because in 1832 they have abolished the Rajakarya system or the prevailing management system. But then within 15 or 20 years, they found that everything is going into neglect and wanted to bring it back. So the Velvidani was brought along with that. Velvidani was a distinctive local leader. Then the next one, 30.
Yes, Valvidana.
Slide 30.
Yeah, Valvidana system.
Yeah. So I am giving some picture. Sorry. I'll go to that slide then. Yeah. Among these different management systems, this is 31, slide number 31 in my list. Is it okay? Or?
It's Valvidana system in our one, number 30.
Right. Okay. So the Valvidani system, I wanted to explain this natural leadership, how it was maintained for so long periods of time. He was not a paid officer, but later on during the British time, he was given what you call the salaris. Salaris means from each farmer in the village, they contribute a small share to keep the system, to pay the Valvidani. Salaris is corrupted from salaries, right? The word salaries and salaris is the same, the local word. Anyway, Valvidani system was the atom of the whole society. I mean, the base, village level management system. Then comes the yeah, and there is current relevance. I have touched on this due to climate change and so on. Maybe I will pass on to the next one. Then actually, when we start this thinking about cascade ensembles, we wanted, this is new research, ensembles, we wanted to classify them, and we found a large number of types of tank clusters. They are the ones who are marked here. To get a better view, we go to slide, next slide 34. Maybe your slide is different. The Heberwave system.
Which one? Is this not the picture? Is this the picture you want?
Yeah, the blue tanks and so on.
Yes, Heberwave system, yes.
Heberwave system, yeah. This is one type of tank ensembles by the side of Yangoya. You can see what happens is that this is the lower region in the basin, Rio Basin, and when there is flood, it overflows the banks and fills up the whole area. But when the flood recedes, water is left in ponds-like thing, as shown in the this side. So people have converted that into some tank system, right? Then we go to the next slide. It's another tank ensemble. You can see it here. Sorry.
Rehabilitate cascade systems.
Can you see the why rehabilitate cascade systems?
Yes, that's what we got on the screen. Yes.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah, why rehabilitate cascade systems? That's the slide.
Yeah. Are you getting disturbed from some other propaganda or whatever?
No, not now. They've
Okay, right. You can see here with this yellow line around, there is a cascade ensemble being marked. This is a cascade cluster which is fed by springs, groundwater. So there are different types of it. That's what you are trying to explain. And also the next slide, 36, maybe the number is different. It is associated with the local ecology. Of course, this is elephant bathing place. But animals, the forest, the paddy fields, the tank fish, all that forms a combined man-made system in human ecology. This is the whole argument. Then let me pass through quickly.
Which slide?
The next slide.
Mhm.
Where are we?
Romanticize in the past.
Yeah, just a minute. Yeah, romanticize in the past. This is a meeting of the seasonal meeting, Kanna meeting, in one of the villages. People discuss things and plan how to manage water and so on. This is very traditional and coming down the ages, I think. Then coming to major irrigation systems, are you with me?
Yes.
This is a photograph I have taken at Nura, one of the oldest city tanks in Anuradhapura, presumably built around 430 BC by one of the leading kings. You can see the inscription here in Sinhala, which gives the year 430 BC. And also there is another aspect of this whole civilization, that is cobra symbol, multi-hooded cobra symbol. And still actually no proper understanding is there what it means. Although some of our main government agencies like irrigation and Mahavali, they use this as their departmental symbol. I will proceed to the next one.
Mhm.
Again, you can see one of the oldest Bisokotua in the country in the south. In Sinhala, the inscription says that the name of the tank is Urusitana Pauranika Sarovar, the ancient sluice. So at the ancient sluice also you can see this multi-hooded cobra. And I think different cobra symbols have different number of hoods. Now this one you can see 3, 4, 7 symbols, 7 hoods. We do not know what they mean really. Next slide.
Yes. Yodala.
Yodala, yeah. So the one asks the most important geographical formation in the whole civilization. It is this or the canal which brings water from Yodava down marked in blue, and for 54 miles it is taking water to the city tank of Tisara. This canal itself is a wonder because apparently when it was discovered, it was still flowing in most sections after many hundreds of years. So they would have had some idea of the regime theory, which is very familiar in the modern engineering, started from India by some French engineers. So apparently these people had an idea of the regime theory. Otherwise, this can't be so accurate. Its its gradient is imperceptible with 6 inches per mile. Even with theodolites and so on, there can be a bigger error. Okay, the next is a picture of the Kalaweva Bisokotu, or the valve pit. At the highest level of water, I took this picture. You can see the dynamism, the force involved in this thing. So if you go to the actual graphics of it, in the next slide, I take it from Aushadhami, who is an architect who do this. You can see the control tower, the bridge, the embankment of the tank, the tunnel kind of thing that takes water and so on. So Visokotu was the kingpin of the whole civilization, as I say. But let us look at in the next slide, picture of the outlet of the sluice. Inlet we have seen earlier. So this is the sluice of the Kalagava tank. And then when the British period came, it was in ruins, but then there were governors who understood its, the importance, like the one whose face is given here, and they renovated the whole thing by human labor. At present, they are preserving part of the old Visokotu, old sluice gate, right? So it can be seen on the top of the bund rather, but it has been recovered from the old this thing. Then came the concept of Nagaravapi or city tank systems. In a dry area with seasonal water shortages, the capital city could not be maintained without city tanks. And the Pokunu and Vau became the key factors that made it a success. Okay, then let me show you the next slide, the Nura, the city tank of Anuradhapura. So these three tanks, you can see them on the side. On your left side is the Tisarawa, and then the new town area, and then on your right hand is the Nurarawa. So these, Baswakulam is the oldest tank in the country, supposed to be, but these three tanks served this big settlement, big city. The city itself is a kind of a puzzle for me. I mean, I love to live there. And you see, such a long time back, almost 25 centuries, a city had come up, planned city, and as big as London, Greater London, and maintained by the three city tanks. And this is the epitome of the hydraulic civilization. Let me pass through quickly to save time. Then I go to another tank in the northwestern area called the Giant Tank. In the olden days, it was called Manavatuva. Manavatuva means there was a type of birds who used to come there. Even today they do. This is near Mana. The system was different. I mean, they get water to the main tank through a diversion from Malatuve, but serves 200 odd minor tanks because they can't keep water here because the underground geology is different. It is limestones, right? So then there are 7 sluice gates in this tank, even today. That's another type. And then this is the picture I have showed you. It's very important. It is taught in the schools and so on. That is the well-known dictum of King Parakramabahu, who said, not a single drop of water received from the rains should be allowed to go to waste and flow down to the ocean without benefiting the world. Sometimes this is misquoted in schools. It says without benefiting the man. No, that's not what is in the Mahavansa.
Okay. Next one.
Benefiting the world, that means including.
Are you there?
This is slide 48 in my line. I don't know.
Yeah.
You can see this statue,
yeah.
no?
Yes, I'm with Parakramabahu. Yeah.
Yeah. So it has been misquoted, but now it is corrected because I think in planning small tanks, there were tanks set apart for wild animals. You see, So this is, and also there had been some of the first sanctuaries in the world at Mihintale to protect the wild animals. So that is the kind of ecological setting which was there. But then when the king said this, the ministers confused, and they said, no, this is something we can't do, because to save water from every drop of water. But the king was adamant, and he said that there is nothing that cannot be achieved by men with determination, so you go and start your work. So I think I attribute the cascade system idea to this. It recycles water. The single drop of water is used so many times, before it reaches the sea. Okay, let me go down to the next slide. For some reason or other, the largest rivers were not tapped by the, no reservoirs were built across them by the ancients. Maybe they didn't have the huge technology that we enjoy today, but more than that, perhaps they knew the ecological consequences of such an exercise, as we have seen in recent times. Okay, let me go through. Sorry that I quickening the process. Hello, yes.
Collapse of the ancient hydraulic civilization.
That's right, yes, that is the one. So this wonderful civilization which grew, which evolved for more than a millennium, from 3rd century to BC to 1300 AD, like, began to dissipate and collapse. And up to now, there is no consensus on what happened. There are different theories. Some say it is due to malaria. Some say it is climate change. It happened in other countries during the same time. Then some say it is due to depletion of soil fertility. And some say to a combination of factors. That's the combination theory. Of course, these are mostly, as I say, an area where many imaginations have wandered without scientific justification. Okay, the next one. I just display some prominent writings by Nichols, who thought that it is malaria. Then the Indian author Kamala Markandeya shows that it is the force of nature which is coming back when people relax things, attend to it in greater detail, and so on. Then Rhodes Murphy thought that it is a combination of factors. Then Codrington of the Royal Asiatic Society, I think, in which Shihan is a member. He thought that it is due to foreign invasions. So these are some of the theories. And of course, above all, I must refer to Paranavitana, who was the doyen of archaeologists in our country. He attributed this to the, not just due to invasions, he thought the leaders of the community who had the know-how of managing irrigation systems were annihilated by the invading forces, and the people were left as a herd of sheep without their shepherds. So he argued that the man who left to propagate the race must have not been the fittest and the most vigorous, and their progeny in the recent subsequent generations did not possess the necessary stamina of mind and body to cope with the difficult situations that they were faced with. These are rather philosophical statements. I too am inclined to believe that it is the destruction of the leadership that left the country to become desolate and capitals to be moved and so on. So there is much to be learned from it. Then let me go to the next slide, slide number 50. 3 according to my one. Well, we are talking about tanks and canals and clusters of tanks, the cascade systems and so on. But then that is not that does not encompass the whole hydraulic civilization, because there were developments related to water in architecture, like the ancient stupas, which are made by bricks. Apparently, the bricks came from the bottom sediment of tanks. And then this is the Jetavana stupa. And then, of course, the bridges across the rivers made of stone. They were also part of the whole civilization. Then, of course, there were the famous water gardens in Sigiriya. This is a tourist great tourist attraction. You can see the symmetrical development of water garden. It's beautiful. Recent archaeologists have discovered springs or fountains in different parts, and the fountains water go high up. When the tank gets filled, the tank you can see on the right hand side on the northeast corner, and then that means the tank water is used to develop the water gardens. And let me go next to other aspects of the hydraulic civilization, that is hygiene side, and then of course the paintings and sculptures and so on. Well, this is an ancient toilet, maybe dating back to 3rd century AD. It's beautifully carved, and this is found at the meditation center, and there are many of them around the city, right? It's a kind of a urinal. And then you come to paintings. It's a painting from the Galdurua temple in Kandy. It is still preserved. This white elephant called Ali Atta was believed to be an animal who can bring rains to a place. So when the part of the country is suffering from droughts, the white elephant was taken. And this is, of course, the story from India. But this is supposed to be one of the finest paintings, finest ancient paintings. And then let me go to the next one, slide 56. Shihan, okay with you?
Yeah, and there are twin bathing ponds.
Yeah, this is the decorative ponds where people, not average people, but the royalty and others, the queens at their baths. This is called the Ranmasuviyana, or the goldfish park. There has been goldfish in these ponds, but look at this small stone sculpture on the wall of the pond. You can see elephants bathing in a lotus pond, right? Enjoying it. They are so happy, right? In constructing our university at Peradeniya, apparently Jennings had the wisdom to, bring this sort of thing into the university. In the main lecture theatre at the back, you can see this particular sculpture. Anyway, it's a goldfish park is a place you must not forget to visit if you ever happen to come to Anuradhapura. And then the twin ponds are here. These are long ones. Two ponds go together, and how the water was purified before they came in. And of course, there too, you have the 500 cobra symbol that needs further explanation by more research. Okay, now are you with me, Shihan, with the
Yes.
title of the slide, Irrigation Governance?
Yes, I'm there now.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So the governance of the whole system in the country was based on water tank. Now, the word Nuwara Kalaviya was the name of the ancient division. The name itself was made from three words, Nuwara, Kalaviya and Padaviya, three major tanks in the area. So they were combined to say Nuwara Kalaviya. And the whole civilization was called the Vayubandi Rajya, tank, the kingdom of tanks. So it was governed by rulers called Vannibandaras. And the Vannibandara chief one lived in Anuradhapura, looking after the biggest tank, Nura. And there are other his assistants, Vanni Unnahe, in other areas. So the first one called Mahavanni, and the others were called Guruluvanni and Kalagam and so on. This was I think the whole governing structure was built on the tank systems. But when the first British government agent came to Anuradhapura, he thought he can wield a lot of power. He's like a viceroy. And but the people were not taking his orders. So then he had to use these drummers to go around the villages and beat their tom-toms and say that, now look, the king has changed. Now the British queen is the king, the monarch. So you have to obey her orders, not the king's orders. So then only people would come round and support the government agent. So gradually the Vani system was given, disappeared, and this present thing came up. But then, of course, the other British writers, particularly the government agents who in Anuradhapura, their writings are very interesting. They say that when they took over, you can see this in a paper by the person with the name Brodie in 1859 in the Royal Asiatic Society Journal. He says that for 3 years he stayed there. There had been no violent events reported to him. People are managing their own affairs. And then the woman can walk through the jungle any time of the day. Except from wild animals, there had been no threat. So that was the society which prevailed, you see. And it was descending from the ancient days. Okay, next one. I'm trying to elaborate this subject a little more. I depend on this writing by Karunananda on Nuwara Kalaviya, his PhD thesis. And he describes this, the first encounter between Vanni, Bandara, and then the British. Later on, they fell apart and began to rebel against the British government. So the last person who occupied Nuwara Mahavanni position, he joined the rebels and fought against the British government. And finally, when the rebellion was dispersed, he was caught and put in the Gaol prison, where he stayed for 12 years or so. And by the time he returned to his home, the home has changed. His wife has taken another husband or something of that sort, right? So anyway, this story is fully explained by Karuna. But one thing is very obvious in the British system of governance, that they respected as much as possible the ancient tradition. So the entire irrigation ordinance uh, was based on the custom, prevailing custom. They codified it, but not try to change it. That is how they have survived up to now. So then I would briefly touch on this sustainability. What would happen in the future? How can they manage things? One thing we learned from the history of the hydraulic civilization and its collapse is that when the central government was disrupted, the major tanks fell into disrepair because they were governed by the central government. But the village life could continue, can be carried on, because they had the know-how. When the tank bund collapses, they get together with the neighboring villages and repair it. But not when a big reservoir collapses. So if the central, so even when the central government was not operational in times of invasions, the small village systems continued with their indigenous methods of governance. Right. The next one. Here I used to argue that, are you okay? Yeah.
Yes, I'm okay.
The last slide.
This is the last slide, yes, about Varna.
Yeah, some of these words, used in our terminology, their etymologies cannot be found. Varna is one of them. The Vava itself is one of them. Then Horova is one of them, Sluice. So they may be pre-Brahministic in origin. I mean, our present language came from the Brahministic tradition. So here, I think I must highlight the value of inventions. I mean, for that, the necessity is the mother of all inventions, hold true. And the whole population, the way they spend their day-to-day routine of life, I mean, waking up, everybody wakes up very early and goes to sleep early. Same thing like in English way, early to bed and early to rise. What do you say? Make you healthy and wise, something like that. So then the bathing every day, keeping clean, and so on. Then the activities, the simple way of living. I think those are the issues. Those are the factors that maintain this culture for long periods of time. Even the cascade systems, as long as the need is there, they maintain it. I mean, it never collapses. So, finally, I must say the ongoing climate change and increasing commercialism, among other impacts, have confused the traditional old elements that pose new challenges to confront. They are indeed formidable challenges that may even decide their very survival. So these systems, I don't know how long they would survive, but the whole question is, with the modern technology and everything, are we happier than those people who lived in these little villages with their basic needs met and so on? So Kumaraswamy, one of our famous, I consider him as one of the greatest intellectuals who lived. He says that the people who were involved in these sculptures, carvings, paintings, that society was happier than those of the modern societies based on cities. well, these are debatable things. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you, and sorry for the trouble you had to go through. It's another slide before I wind up. This is the renovated Kurnagala tank at the drone with mist over it. So it's a kind of a, wonderful picture. And then finally, some of the key publications I have used for this. So thank you very much. Thank you, Shihan. Thank you, Ruan. And thank you for all of those who have stayed behind or had to stay through the technical hiccups here and there. Thank you very much. Yeah, by the way, I never thought that this Japanese little gadget, which can be powered by the hand, can help me in this. Otherwise, this should have already gone. So thank you very much, and wish you good day and good night.
So the Japanese gadget has been our savior today. Yes.
Pardon?
The Japanese gadget has been our savior for this lecture. It saved you
No,
coming
no,
back.
no, not the failed one. But
Yeah.
this is the gadget which makes me to run the computer. You have to you have to turn it by hand, generate power, right? One of my friends brought it. If not for that, I would not have seen my computer. Okay.
Anyway, thank you for a very engaging lecture. And in this short time, you've taken us through a lot of Sri Lanka. And I know a lot of them are in the sun, very sunny day, watching Wimbledon and with lots of distractions. But the dedicated few are here listening. So I will ask them to ask questions first, and then I will ask my own. So if anybody has, I can see 2 hands up already. Ajanta is first. Ajanta, would you like to ask your question?
Professor Bandara, that was a fascinating lecture. I really loved your presentation. Can I ask a sort of a medical question from you? The chronic kidney disease, there was a theory that was populated some time back that some of these smaller valves sort of received off the heavy metals that is in the groundwater, and they were not used for irrigation. Is there any evidence of that from your knowledge?
Well, I think this is one area I had some opportunity to work with some Japanese scientists.
Yeah.
And you see, I mean, rather sadly, I must say, this is one medical problem for which the entire scientific community has failed so far to diagnose it fully and to recommend some, treatment for that. But there can be various aspects to it. There is one study they made in Madduma area with which I was associated. It was a very sad village I visited, where every 1 in 3 or 4 houses, you can say, been abandoned, and the trees are growing them because the whole family died of this sort of thing. So it was that bad. So these people, they took about 200 samples, blood, urine, hair, you name it, nails and everything. But then they came to the conclusion that the first theory of cadmium being involved in it is not feasible. And also the whole idea that it is associated with drinking water was not clearly coming out of their study. So there are very divergent viewpoints here. In my own way, I thought there is some involvement of genetics here. say in one of the villages, it is in that, the cascade system I showed you earlier, with that map of the cascade. And some people of the Adivasi or the earlier original stock of people live in that village. And none of them had had kidney disease. But the adjoining village, which is occupied by another caste group, very high caste group of people, half the village were suffering from that. You see, so I still believe that there is some genetic aspect to this which has not been investigated fully. And one of my earlier friends from Canada, Professor Fernando, I caught him one day in a village and he was looking at the old Vedda village settlements. And I, without telling him my observation, I asked him, you are dealing with Vedda villages, how about the prevalence of the kidney disease? They said, my God, I was surprised that it was, they are totally, some of the villages are totally free from it. So that's sort of direction in research. I think it is worth pursuing. I don't know where I would end up. It may not fit with the present social democratic values and theories. So coming back to what you asked, yes, our own research indicates that the tanks in the lower end of a cascade have more chemical, particularly the pH we have measured because it is easy to do it. The pH increases sometimes by 4 or 5 times when you go down the tanks. And the topmost tanks occupied by those Adivasi people, the tank water was clean enough to drink straight away. So that is the kind of thing I have come across, but a lot of work has been done on this without any conclusions, Sorry, I don't know whether I explained this adequately. Please respond if you...
Okay, well, one of the explanations that was given to me, I don't know whether there is any truth in it, was that the vegetation in some of the unused tanks mop up some of these toxic chemicals. And that's why they are either unused or they were designed to be not to be used, but have the vegetation mop up, by the ancients. I don't know whether anybody can prove those things.
Well, this is an area where that sort of research has not been done because we are looking for an answer from the medical science research point of view. But I think that will not carry us any further than where we are now, unless we take the whole system into account, the tank, the rice field, the tank fish and everything, forest and that sort of thing, then only we may be able to reach somewhere. To be frank, at one time, there was a group of scientists who came here and I happened to be invited to have a chat with them. And then, you see, in a large gathering in Maharagama, I said that you all have failed in finding any solution to this. Then some of them turned around and say, if you say the medical sciences have failed, then what do you propose? Then I said, why not alternative medicine? So that infuriated some of them. But we were given the task of looking through the kind of solutions from the indigenous medicine side. And I got hold of the principle of the Kramarachi, this thing, and other types of indigenous medical people and so on. But I was neither of them. So I promised them I can read at least 1 or 2 books and tell you what it is. So I started reading this book by no other person than the king himself, King Buddhadasa, whose hospital is still there in Mihintale in ruin. Sarartha Sangraha, I read it twice or thrice, but there was no reference to kidney disease. There are references to elephant headaches and so on, so many of them. 700-page long book. And then, of course, I found the nearest reference as a Mutra Prameha Paddhati Akarane. That is dysfunctioning of the urinal system. So I think if you look for this problem from a systems point of view, I feel that we may be able to find something. Otherwise, this highly specialized, narrowly defined approach to this research may not carry us very far. I don't know whether I have been too harsh. If I am, please forgive me.
Well, thank you very much for answering my question. Thank you.
Thank you. It's Sati Arya next. Would you like to ask your question?
Thank you, Shihan.
Shihan, I'm sorry that I can't see their faces. So
yes, you can.
Yeah,
if you like, you can turn on your camera, but some may not want to.
Anyway, no. In any case, I cannot see it from here because it is technical heat. So please request them to speak a little louder.
My apologies, because I have a problem with my camera. That's why you are unable to see me. Hopefully you can hear me, Professor.
Yes, we can.
Yes, certainly. Yes.
Thank you, Professor Bandara. Many thanks for the enlightening presentation. I think you referred to the lack of revival of the old systems when you were talking about the tanks. Now, if that is due to the failure of our modern political masters, is it just the lack of a political will because they become more and more dependent on American dollar? Or is it because such a revival is not in keeping with modern hydro engineering concepts in terms of fitness for purpose?
I could not understand fully because the sound is very weak when I hear from him.
Okay, let me try again. Now, if the revival of the hydro engineering systems cannot be achieved in modern times, is it the result of a lack of political will, or is it because it is considered unworthy in terms of the expenditure?
Okay. I think political will is a critical factor because in the good old days, the control and direction came from the king or the monarchy. And if the Minister of Irrigation neglected these duties and Kalava collapsed, the tradition was for him to, commit suicide by jumping into the spate of water. That was total accountability, right? So if that role is not taken seriously by the administrators, then there is a problem. I certainly agree with you. But at the same time, I am not saying that we can revive these old systems in total. I think the times have changed and economies have changed, and they are no longer agricultural republics, For some villages with I think 30 families, there were more than 30 government officers going and coming out to do various functions. So that change has taken place. So what I am saying is that we have to distill the essence of the hydraulic civilization and take certain principles from them. For example, I mean, whatever we do, we are looking for greater happiness, but are we achieving under the modern technical thing? Are we happier than our parents? So that sort of question has to be asked. And in that respect, I think there is a world trend where happier villages are envisaged. I mean, for us living in a city or in a Western country will bring us a lot of physical benefit, but not the mental kind of satisfaction. So if we turn around and say, take a man who lived in a tank village and with his whole generation and their relatives and their social security and so on, were they happier than the modern people? Question of measuring happiness is a problem. I remember I encountered this at the University, and of course, when I said instead of GDP and GNP, I think we must have a happiness index. So everybody laughed at me, but I said in time to come, we will have to develop measures of that sort. Now there is what you call the happiness index circulated by world organizations. So I think key question is whether we are creating happier societies, not the more sophisticated, that sort of thing. I am lost at this, I must say. Anyway, thank you. Maybe I was a little off the tangent. If that is so, please forgive me.
Thank you very much. I got a supplementary question, but I will leave it to Shihan to decide whether I should go ahead or whether I should give a chance.
Yeah, okay.